Who are you, and what is your purpose? Let me tell you who you are. Understanding humans' behavior is a vital fundamental to understanding your own true identity, for what you stand and for what you loathe. It is a feeling we all have, this inferiority, an emptiness of our true purpose and our true existence. What we think we do not have or do not possess normally determines what one becomes in life. Our opposition, however, is a man with a false purpose. Let us call him the vain individual, not the spiritual individual or the unique individual searching for himself. The vain individual is quite the opposite. He looks to compete against other people. The vain individual wants one thing in life. He wants to be more important and successful than anyone else in the world. And his purpose is to conquer the world. And this is out of a direct result of his inadequacy. You see, the character is formed somewhat between two opposing forces: a need for power or personal aggrandizement, and a need for social feeling and a togetherness. Both forces are in opposition, and each of us is unique because we all accept or reject forces in different ways. For example, a striving and dominant person would normally be limited by recognition for his community or of community expectations, and his vanity or pride is kept in check. However, when ambition or vanity takes over, a person's psychological growth can become abrupt, or rather to an abrupt end. As Adler dramatically put it, the power-hungry individual follows the path to his own destruction. When the first force, social feeling and community expectation, are ignored or affronted, the person concerned will reveal certain aggressive character traits: withdrawal, anxiety, or rather vanity, ambition, envy, jealousy, playing God, or greed, or lust. Whereas the non-aggressive traits however, are withdrawal, anxiety, timidity, or absence of social graces. Either way, most people are either on one side. However, an extreme of either side can cause dysfunction in one's personality or one's psychological growth. Well, you see, any time any of these forces gets the upper hand, it creates a deep-seated feelings of inadequacy. Communal life involves certain laws and principles that an individual cannot get around. Each of us needs the rest of the community in order to survive both mentally and physically. As Darwin noted, weak animals never live alone. Adler contended that adaptation to the community is the most important psychological function that a person will master. People may outwardly achieve much, but in the absence of this vital adaptation, they may feel like nothing and be perceived as much by those close to them. Such people, Adler said, are in fact enemies of society. A central idea to Adlerian psychology is that individuals are always striving toward a goal, whereas Freud saw us as always driven by our past. Adler had a teleological view that we were driven by our goals, whether they are conscious or not. The psyche is not static, but must be galvanized behind a purpose, whether selfish or communal, and continually moves around fulfillment of that. We live life by our fictions or fantasies about the sort of person we are and the person we are becoming. However, by nature, these are not always factually correct, but they enable us to live with energy, always moving towards something. It is this very fact of goal-directedness that makes the psyche almost indestructible and so resistant to change. Adler wrote, the hardest thing for human beings to do is to know themselves and to change themselves. All the more reason, perhaps, for individual desires to be balanced by the greater collective intelligence of the community. However, my thanks to the author, Tom Butler Bowdon, of the 50 Psychology Classics, Who We Are, How We Think, What We Do, and my thanks, obviously, to Alfred Adler, Understanding Human Nature. However, what we have here in our society is a deviant community whom are trying to gain control over other people's lives. And they want ultimate power. But their power is a false power. It is not a power based on a spiritual power of finding oneself, of being creative and doing good for the communal spirit as a collective, as a whole, working alongside the community. They want power to control the community with whatever fuel they can use, normally a commodity. One of the most powerful commodities in fashion at the moment is the commodity cocaine. It has a power, an ideology of false belief power of the bad man or the gangster, whom everyone look up to and idolize because they're bad. That is an ideology, but it is fueled, has to be fueled, because the power has to come from some material purpose, and the fuel is the power. They then corrupt the mind of the younger children by polluting their mindset, by bringing them on side when the person has dropped out of school, high school, or become a bit dysfunctional or unloved or lost. They are preyed upon by these undesirable pollutants. Mr. Big we have, whom is in full financial power. We also have a puppet master who works alongside Mr. Big to keep him in power, who pulls the strings if anything goes wrong, to hold people responsible for the things that go wrong in their empire, such as a scapegoat, someone to blame for when something happens. You see, we are creative individuals, all of us, but a group sometimes wants to be so passive that they want to be held by someone else. They don't want to find their creativity. These people are normally people that are lost. Something's happened to them in their lives. But then you have the vain individual who thinks he's above everybody, the opposite. He wants to be more important than everyone else. Normally this will be a Mr. Big. To be more important, more successful than anyone else. The ones below him looking up to Mr. Big, whom are passive, very passive, meek, shall we say. They need the ideology of looking up to Mr. Big, but he feeds them that to keep them at bay, so that they respect him and do what they want, what he wants them to do. ERICKSON identified crisis, a personality crisis, of identity crisis, who we are. Once born, there was Luther, 1483. ERICKSON argues that this is quite fitting for themselves and fit into the ideology of their youth adulthood. But twice-born people are often tortured souls who seek healing and total direction. These normally are the geniuses. They have been hurt at school in a younger age, but they have a second wind at life. But the once-born people, they fit themselves and comply to everyone else into their ideology. They are never born again. But it is the people that are born twice who transform themselves into a potent position where the world wants to follow them and adore them. They are great charismatic leaders in their own right, because they lead everyone else to find their true identity and their true path. At the moment, in this undesirable world in which we live, we are being controlled by an ideology of evil, self-empowerment, not working for the community, wanting control of the community, delivering hatred into the community, passive forms of aggression. How are you? You well? Getting close to you to try and tip you over, to work you out, to gain access into your mind to control you. Remove yourself from this dark, deviant community of Hades, an ugly underworld, a dark, deviant underworld. Do not become embroiled with them. You see, on our streets now we have all sorts of catering houses supported by communities, housing associations opening up crack dens on our streets, ready vacuums for all the people to fall into, muggings on our streets of old ladies. Do we want to live that society? No. I say you depart from that way of living. Rise up, detach, and find yourselves your purpose and your true identity.